Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, and it really is always, there's a lot of validation moving forward on this path when something from the ordained life comes into your existence, not the generated life, because that's all we're saturated with in this time. And being able to connect with this next cat, who's just like a very primal spiritual musician, but also I've recognized the way he articulates things is also a guru of sorts, even though being a good guru, he's very humble, doesn't consider himself that, but it was very much evident to me in our first interview. So it's an honor to welcome back Ashwin Batish to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Glad to be back again on the second session over here.
Just beginning, my friend. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but just pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back.
All right, go for it.
And there was another one in India. We were the first jazz group to go to India in quite a while, maybe since Benny Goodman. I don't know what the exact details are. This was the mid-'70s with Lookout Farm, my first group. And we had cobblers with us, Badal and Richie Byrack.
I love it. Yeah, go ahead, continue.
And Jeff Williams, yeah. And, when we got to India, first city was Calcutta, which was really grim. And I'll never forget that first concert we played in Calcutta, where the people were just, the vibe of the people was so serious. I mean, Calcutta was a serious place then, and still is. Quite pretty dark vibe, people picking up bodies every night, stuff like that. And here we were at this part of the world, and of course this one, 75, when, it wasn't so common to go traveling like that. Here we are playing our music for these people who are so passionate and soulful, and who have such a life to have to live in the way they live there. That was quite a moment to me.
Ashwin, that was an interview I did with the great saxophone player David Liebman, and I just wanted you to talk about going to the first time you went to Calcutta with your parents.
Okay, so I am from the Punjab area, first of all. Punjab is north of Calcutta, going towards more of the Himalayas and stuff like that, more towards the northern side of India. Calcutta is, I have never been to Calcutta, but the vibes that he's talking about are pretty much the same, doesn't matter where you go. Calcutta is a very beautiful place. I know a lot of people from there. It's the region of Bengal.
I mean, I guess maybe what was an eye-opening experience for you in the sense, he's talking about picking up bodies in the street. What kind of vibe can you talk about that had an imprint on you as a young boy?
So he's talking about picking up dead bodies or something. I think.
I mean, he just was. I'm not sure. He basically said he went to perform there with his group, and it just was. It was the vibe was so serious. It was. He said it was a serious place. I just was wondering if, in fact, that was something that you could relate to in your own travels. If you went to the most, the tough, the hardest, the most impoverished, or the most hardcore places in India. It's very foreign to most Westerners.
Yeah, Jeff, you see, the thing is, a lot of people that are going from a Western country to an area of the world where, the niceties of sanitization and everything are not easily available. But remember, these cultures have been living for thousands of years over there before the Western world was even formed. So yes, he might have gotten a shock. I would say it's more of a culture shock going from this world to the world over there, but that world is perfectly in harmony, living the way it is. But what my feeling is that when people go to India and they experience seeing life as it has always been, with births and deaths and, joy and sorrow all coexisting simultaneously, it can be quite overwhelming. It's not like it's being channeled to you through the TV or a television show it's very well sanitized. Some of them are not anymore, but you get to actually get the exhilaration of, exactly what's happening in life. But a place like India, a place like Jakarta, a place like Indonesia, places which the Western world has, maybe less of a live interactive experience with, when they go there, this experience becomes a little bit shocking, of course, and definitely stories to tell when they come back. When growing up in India, was maybe I was around all this. I would see, people, processions going from, as a child, I would see processions like going towards the cemetery, and I would see a little child in a cradle, and then I would follow them, and I would see them being buried. So experience like that, to me, was natural. It's like we were always in awe, always in sorrow, always in a bit of a shock of it. But at the same time, we were also in harmony with the fact that this is something happening over here. We somehow see this thing as an alarming thing, but it's not really that alarming.
Let me, because I mean, you may not be hip to him, but I mean, he was one of the cats. He was playing with Miles Davis back in the late '60s, so he was playing at the Fillmore West, Fillmore East, rowdy crowds, people that basically were taught in the West to, in a kind of a classicalized way, to applaud after a tune, even if we don't even like the tune. We're supposed to do that, like a trained seal. Whereas the people there were very serious. You didn't necessarily know if you were getting them off or not musically. So it was also just a serious. It was the vibe. That's what I'm really trying to get at, is the vibe. It's like that is. I'm not even talking about sanitation or anything. I know Zakir. He said that he spent, I mean, before the pandemic, he would go to the poorest villages in India and play music for them. And that's what I kind of wanted you to talk about, because you said you played.
Yeah, so so that's the whole thing. You see, you are talking about a culture that has existed for, in harmony for a long time.
Yes,
so
yes.
Poorest, of course, are, just as happy or maybe happier than the richest.
Right.
But the vibrations of music have, their song is different. It's not like the classical song. And, great artists going there and, playing in front of them, definitely, I mean, they are mind-blowing. But I remember this one guy that came to the San Francisco, the auditorium I went to see a concert. Actually, Zakir was playing in there. And we had an instance where he was playing a little instrument called the duff. Duff is like a drum, which is made out of a skin head. And so, this gentleman who was playing, he was very well regarded, respected classical musician of South India. And he was playing this thing, and suddenly it came time to take a solo. So he looked back there, and this very small, very mild-mannered duff player, who, the kanjira they call it, actually, very small duff. He was sitting there, and he nodded to him, and the guy just got up, and, in a very humble manner, he came in front of the microphone. And what he unleashed in 5 minutes literally blew everybody away, because, he might have been just the guy with this little tambourine, but the way he played, he sounded like a monster that would match anybody out there as far as a drummer is concerned. His musicianship was mind-blowing. Even Zakir will agree to that, because half walked out of the hall after he finished because they couldn't take any more music after that. So when we talk about people like that existing in the world, we know that the vibrations are so crucial to what makes us, not just appreciators, but they reverberate with us in much bigger way than just appreciation. They actually move our soul. They shake us to the very existence that we say we are, So, and going to India and going somewhere and to a poor place doesn't mean that they are poor in their knowledge and the folk musicians in India kill it, literally.
Right. He said, it's very, it is a very rare and unfortunate occurrence that, like he said there, he went in 75 and he thinks he might have been the first band to go there since Benny Goodman. So it's really ignorance because we have not sent, there hasn't been a lot of music or a lot of tours there, and I know.
Yeah. The thing that he doesn't realize, or he didn't realize himself, because to him, it's a new experience. But jazz music has been in India since the 30s. when it was imported into the Indian area by the Goanese musicians. They were coming in and out of there. These cats were already bringing jazz into India.
Hold on. No, I want you to slow down here. This is important because uh, I mean, you're talking about cats from the motherland of Africa, or I mean, where were these cats coming from?
From America, man, and from the from the jazz. I mean, the guys who were doing the jazz over here, the bebop and everything.
Right.
It was finding its way back into India back in the early 30s, even. You see, and we don't recognize that. India has been a hotbed of this, and the people from Goa, I have to give them credit for it because they are the backbone of the population that brought this culture, because they were always into that. They loved this thing that was happening in America. This thing that we had these the Louis Primo, the Miles Davises, and the John Coltrane's and everything, and predating them, whoever was bringing this stuff into India, they were the ones that were spinning the records. And they were the ones that were introducing. So the rest of Indian, of course, we were really into classical music and folk music.
Right.
But the whole aspect of what you are mentioning is really an influx into India through Goa, through the Portuguese. See,
wow, dude, you're blowing my mind. So they would come back. What kind of records? Because, I mean, there were different eras. I mean, you had the big band era of the 40s. Bebop took over in the 50s. So, I mean, I'm just curious about, like, what you... And then there was all this soul R&B music as well. But, like, do you definitively remember getting your hands on some, like, I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. My dad was right in the thick of the whole thing, you see. And Goanese musicians that were Portuguese were the best music readers. And so all the industry you see today is thanks to them, because they brought music reading, the ability for orchestras to exist in Bollywood, in the film industry, you see. So now we see Bollywood people going in this fancy, A.R. Rahman kind of orchestration, and you go, man, these guys are like killing it in the Western. No, it's the Portuguese guys. They are the ones that brought all this stuff. They were the readers. They were the ones that my dad would just write stuff for them. He would go like, Raste Bazaar. So he was saying, Raste Bazaaron mein hame thanedar rokega. That's the song. But in the background, all that melody and everything, he would just give his song. And this guy, who was one of his arrangers, was called Sebastian. He would take it. He says, "Master, you just leave it to us." In half an hour, he would have all the score all done up for. He says, my dad would say, "I want this in the violins. I want this." Everything was notated. The orchestra would have it, and boom, they would play it, One Shot Charlie. And then my dad would sing it, recorded, done. That's how good these guys were. That's why readers, that's not the Indian tradition. We don't read music. We just, we are mostly into doing it live, right? We are mostly into the oral tradition. But this written tradition came from the West into India, and that made Bollywood happen and be what it is today. And, it's all the arrangement, all the stuff, like we were talking earlier. Remember that you said that, the drone, I jokingly said the drone is the conductor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So actually we now had the ability, Indian music had the ability to understand how a rag can be presented. But with these cats around us who are steeped into the Western tradition, into the reading tradition, into the jazz tradition, bringing their influence into the Bollywood industry and marrying it with the Indian tradition. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to... I guess I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, really the record-based industry. But, I mean, in terms of Bollywood in the 30s, how was it being disseminated on the radio? I mean, they were in the movie theaters. I mean, to me, like, there wasn't a sophisticated record industry. Well, I guess there was in the 20s, yeah. But I mean, but this is, it was just, India was still in the dark, so to speak, in terms of commerce and that stuff. It didn't get out of the country.
Oh, no. India, see, the India commerce back before 1847 was in the hands of the Britishers.
Right.
And so it was there. It was commerce, but it was done. No, India, believe me, has commerce for thousands of years. If you don't mind me going that far back, we had the Silk Route. You see, India was the richest nation at
Well,
one
no, I
point.
get that, but I'm talking about like when I think of sound,
The music commerce.
right, and then the touring that would come from that, and the sort of and the records and the way it would be disseminated. Like I understand the history. I mean, to
No, no,
me, yeah.
that was very big because I still have some really old records that my dad was a collector of. I have
What
these.
kind of music did he love aside from his own heritage?
Well, so my father was first of all, he was classically trained by his guru, who was Chandan Ramcharan from Patiala. Then after studying with him, he went into the broadcast industry, All India Radio. He became an artist when he was only like about 18 years old. He became an artist of All India Radio, you see. And then at that point, he was hired by HMV to sing covers. And so he would be given 2 rupees to go into a theater, learn the song that the actor is singing, come back, record a cover of that thing, and it would sell just as much as the original did. So that was his beginning.
That's so cool, man.
Then, when he became of age, where he became apprentice to a music director, who was in charge of doing music for concerts and movies and things like that. So he learned the art and the trade from this gentleman who was a cousin of ours. At that point, he started to dabble into being an assistant and dabble into composing. Now, when he started, I remember when I was very young, his big love was shortwave.
Wow.
Because in India we didn't have the FM radio. See, we had the shortwave radio. Now, shortwave radio we don't see in America. I don't know.
What is it? Explain to the audience what it is.
So the shortwave is actually, we have FM, which is the long wave, then we have medium wave, then we have shortwave. Shortwaves are like microwaves that bounce off the earth and go to all further regions of the earth, and they also capture the signal from far away. And so that meant that we could listen to Iran, we could listen to,
Oh my God, is that
the
great?
yeah, so my father could hear, and he used to pay a ton of money. Remember, the media was not as internet. We didn't have TVs. We didn't have,
Absolutely.
all we had was movies. But radio was the biggest source at that time. So shortwave radio was him going and listening to, like Iranian and Persian singers. He would listen to like Portuguese and British pop singers and stuff like that. And as a child, I would be sitting there enjoying all this stuff. Now, he wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
All our neighbors had shortwave radios. And they were all listening to not just the Indian programming, but programming coming from all over the world. And it was a very exciting thing. So anyway, so his influences were all over. I mean, it's not like he would listen to just one. And part of his understanding, and later on adding the sambas and the calypsos and the jazz, he still remembers doing a composition where he used a double bass. And he presented it to the Indian director, music director, not the music director, sorry, the producer. The producer stood there with his hands joined together and says, "Mr. Batish, why do you want to destroy my film?" He says, "Nobody in India understands what a double bass is." Please remove it. He says, "Please remove it and do it like we do traditionally." And my dad obliged him, of course.
Oh man, he was gonna give instruction with a upright bass.
Well, no, he had many composers. My dad loved.
Was he somebody that could just, because he was a vocalist? I mean, that was his trade. But I mean, could he just pick up an instrument and play it immediately?
Absolutely. So when
God,
my father I remember him being with an orchestra. They would walk out, and while I was being fed something, he would be picking up somebody's violin and somebody's double bass and playing it. And he was a wild guy. He
Wow,
loved.
man.
And then when they came back from break, he would show them on the violin what to play.
He was. I mean, your parents were revered by the people, but you said before about the poorest people are much happier in some cases than the richest people in India. I mean, can you just talk about their spiritual compass and how they stayed grounded? And also, it's not. I mean, you can say that it was. You were obviously gifted with a lot of beautiful genes, but I mean, it is hard to be coming up in the presence of kind of a healer like that, sort of a mystic in some ways, you know.
Oh, you mean like my father?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of kids where they come up with parents that are, you know, larger than life, so to speak, and it's just a lot of pressure, you know.
Well,
and I wonder how you dealt with that. I know you didn't have any pressure. I know it was just fun for you, you know.
I was just going to say that it was such a joy being around him.
So
my
cool.
father is my hero,
Yeah.
you know, and as is my mother. My mother was my first teacher. So when I was only about 4 or 5 years old, she would take me to what we call ladies' Sangeet. Lady Sangeet means only women can be there. And all the women would gather in our area and they would sing, you know, happy songs, some songs to do with marriage, some songs to do with like folk songs, right?
Sure.
And so I was invited and she would give me a spoon and that spoon would be making a sound like this. And she would, da 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 da. Da, 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 da. So this hitting of the thing that I'm doing with my glasses right now,
Yeah, right.
like spoon, and so and the spoon would be used. So as I started with playing the spoon, you might say, right, going the tuck 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 tuck, just giving a backbeat kind of a rhythm. Then she made me play the dholak, and the dholak was my first instrument, which is basically a double barrel instrument, and then you just play the bass. If you don't mind, do you want me to play a little bit of that?
It sounds great.
Okay, hang on just one second.
Sure,
Let me get
sure.
It'll just take a second.
Yeah.
So,
Talking to Ashwin Batish here, set 2 here on the Jake Feinberg Show. The Dalek.
so that's a dholak, and it's basically, that's the rhythm. It's like the folk rhythm, right? It's very happy and very like dinka dinna nakka dinna dhage dinna nakka. And I was going takka 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 dhage dhage dinna nakka dinna dhage, right? So then I started playing dholak with her. And after I became 8 or 9 years old, I started to get interested in other instruments. Then my father, of course, came in. And remember, I'm traveling all the time. So my whole experience with my parents was one of the best things in my life. And no pressure. As you say, I'm so sorry to hear when people are under pressure. I feel sorry that, you know.
But I mean, do you think that, let me ask you something, like, you know, I'm not asking you to judge anybody or it's just like, why do you think, because your parents would have loved you unconditionally and that's just who you, like, why do you think there is that sort of pressure? Because with you, I mean, you know, you got both feet on the ground, but it was always like a joyful experience, even though your parents were operating at an exceptionally high vibrational level. And most cats can't get up to that level. You know, sometimes in families that's the case. So do you think that it had everything to do, not just with your aptitude, but just the grace of or would your parents have been disappointed if you were like, yeah, I want to play racquetball or something?
No. My parents were okay everything. See, the thing about parenting in our family, that I'm also the same,
Yeah.
you know, in my own kids' cases,
Yeah.
is that I believe in falling in love with what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't encourage doing what you don't want to do. And I think this is the premise that we used and my father used. Now, it's not to say that parents can be like parents, like they will go, do you want to be a doctor?
Right.
Why don't you become a lawyer? You know, and so I would say some of it rubbed off on me, because I think every parent wants their child to maybe become a superstar moneymaker or something like that.
Absolutely, man. No, I mean, listen. Oh, no, here the point is that, like, just no. You know what it was like. The idea is how do you? Some parents say like if they're a star athlete or you have to do this, you have to make me proud, and like and they won't let them do it, and it just sort of, and it just the plant never really takes full bloom. And
I understand.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
See, in my case, it was just the opposite. My father threw me to the vultures before. It was I was excited, and he let me. Okay, so here's what he did.
Yeah.
He let me play in every concert, and I sounded really bad.
No, that's a very good thing. He allowed you to sound really bad, to sound horrible live for a while because you really could figure it out. Yeah.
So I think at the heart of it was that he was proud that I wanted to do something, but he never put a block in my way. If I wanted to play something, like in one of his records, I will play. I have played in his records, and I know I'm like, what the heck was I doing? Right now, I'm going to go in. I'm going to go in. Body will twist all around, saying, why did I do it? But to him, it was a proud moment that his son, doesn't matter how he's playing, has the guts to get up there and play something.
I love it.
So here's what happened to me, though. I realized that I was not doing well, and I said, okay, this is not good. Practice. So every time I hit these kind of, not through him, he would allow me to do it, but I was the one having the realizations on the way and going, I need to step up my game. And so that was, a very, like a nudge, right?
Yeah, totally. But it was self-motivated. I mean, you could have basically been. You also were driven because you were getting off on music already. You love music. I mean, there's a lot of people that just would, in essence. I love that your dad. Well, I don't know. Like they didn't shelter you. They just. What can you talk about when? After being thrown to the vultures and you were still kind of, sort of insecure, but you really, there was a moment when you just were like on the bandstand, not even playing with your dad, just some sort of live experience that, you went to Never Ever Land on people,
Say that again, please.
You went to you took people into outer space, like you recognized the true powers of your gift.
Well, see, So, Jeff, what happened to me was my earlier life was like I was saying, before. But when I came to America, I had my father and my mother starting the restaurant and me being on that stage. See, I always tell people that I really became a musician when I was on that stage and I finished the 15 years of live playing almost every night. I became the musician I am today only because of that particular period. Before then, it was more goofing off, more like I can do this or showing off and stuff like that. But that's when I realized.
No, I want to talk about that. What do you mean? Yeah. You were like kind of like just like demonstrating technique and facility and kind of, for lack of a better word, you were wanking it up there?
Well, so that's what I'm trying to tell you is that my whole concept of music was very lighthearted.
Yes.
And it was more like I would play Ravi Shankar. I would get Ravi Shankar records, rip off whatever he's doing. So I could do things, but it's not like I had it in my soul. You know what I mean? It was more like I was playing other people's things, and I was good at imitating. I was good at learning things and regurgitating them.
Absolutely, it wasn't a devotional practice. It was. It was.
You're a child, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I was from the age I was 12 to I was like 18 or 19. That's not really a musician, okay? That's really being thrown into the water and saying, "Go on, son, swim,"
Yes.
And I was basically in that mode. But when I hit that restaurant stage and I started to sit with my father between feeding people, people be there eating a dang, 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 dang. The chai is going and the spoons are falling on the floor and all that noise. My dad is going, "Oh, here's this rag and you're going to play it like this." And da 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 da. What did you just do? And I'm playing. So to heck with all the noise, to heck with all the food smells, to heck with my mom going, "That guy on table number 9 needs some help." I was just interested in knowing where's my dad. I'm tuning into him, right? So me and my dad and then later on his students and then my students, all we were focused in was, just listening and playing and then one day I realized that while I was playing, this is about 4 or 5 years down the road, that people were not throwing their spoons on the floor and talking loudly. They were actually looking at us on the stage. That's when I realized there was a profound aha moment for me, that I'm actually doing something that is attracting people's attention.
Dude, there we go. We got some magic going now, man. This is it.
Yeah. That's when I went, holy cow, I can actually do something. So I started to focus in on that.
How old were you? How old were you at that point?
So I was like about 20, I think about like 20, 21 almost.
So at that point, I'm really curious about this because, like Chuck Rainey, arguably like one of the greatest electric bass players. He's been on so many studio hit records. And when he first got to New York, a lot of the cats were giving him grief about playing the electric bass. They'd say things like, "No, if you really want to play, you got to play the wooden, the upright bass. You're not, they thought it was a toy." Now, I want to know from you, when the first time you played with a trap drummer, and have you gotten any grief from traditional classical Indian musicians who say, how could you play in an electric setting? Like, can you talk about how you became comfortable, not even be comfortable, but the first time you played with a trap set, and did you get grief for it?
Okay, so those questions actually are ones that happened almost simultaneously.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You remember I told you when I played, everybody sat down and everybody wanted to meditate?
Absolutely.
So this gentleman I was playing with, Randy Masters, who, again, I'm repeating his name because he's a very good friend of mine and really responsible for me entering the jazz field.
I'm so happy.
He invited me to play at a very large performance hall venue. I think it was like the Herbst Theater or something in San Francisco. And so while we were playing there, he's looking and he didn't even tell me who's behind me. Literally, he had like about 15 people on stage, and there's this cat behind me playing, drums and stuff. And I'm on the tabla, and he goes, "You guys take a solo." And I'm like, "Who are you guys?" And so the guy standing behind me just happens to be Pete Escovedo,
Dude, I got to send you my interview with Pete. I love him so. Dude, we did a cosmic interview. I love him. He was playing timbales or conga?
He was playing both, I think. So when the solo time came, though, my tabla, and he was on an instrument I didn't recognize because at that time I didn't know too many Western instruments.
Wait, hold on. This is so beautiful. You're telling me that you started the groove with the tabla, and then all of a sudden these other cats were like, it just sort of came into your consciousness that they were playing behind you? So
I'm sitting on the floor, and Pete is standing behind me. And so I do my tabla thing.
Right.
And I have a little microphone, and I sound puny,
Yeah.
Because I don't think sound people know how to mic a tabla.
They never have.
In a jazz band, man, they don't give me any power, so I'm banging away with my hands getting really sore. Anyway, so I finished my thing, and I'm like, I look over at behind me because Randy said, I'm going to play a solo with this guy, or Jugalbandi, as I called it.
Jugalbandi, yeah.
And, I still remember Pete's smile on his face. He looked at me, and he just smiled as he looked down on me, right? And then he unleashed one of the loudest volleys of timbale playing I've ever had,
That is so free. You're making my day, dude. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It just blew me away,
Oh, my God.
I still remember his smile on his face. And later on, of course, we've had conversations, and, I'm like, man, that thing just blew me away. I had no idea the power of this man behind me.
Dude, he was, when we did one of the interviews like we're doing right now, and he said, that when Coke, his brother, got the gig with Santana, then he got Pete the gig, and the first night they went to MSG. He barely knew the tunes, but he was banging away and cut his hand and actually played through the pain because of just the idea of being on tour with Carlos Santana was so exhilarating. When you sent me a couple of those tracks, though, I'm hearing you play sitar with a drummer, the Kooumba Jazz Center one.
Oh, that's my son.
Wow. So can you can you talk about um, is there a fissure in the Indian community between fusing with Western loud electric rock music and classical Indian music? I only ask because there's a huge divide in this country between classical musicians and guys that are jammers or jazz musicians, you know, in the sense that there used
Right.
to be some collaboration back in the 60s and 70s. It was actually quite beautiful. You had many different cats and people blending, and there was no real, the academy wasn't, you know, it wasn't very uptight or wonkish, but, you know, so there's this huge separation, and it sucks because putting that fusion together is the most beautiful thing. And I wonder, like, with your son being, you know, a younger cat, growing up in the Western material, growing up in the loud rock world of America, is there a separation between the traditional, you know, the people that want to play it exactly the way it's supposed to be from the origins versus trying to stretch the vocabulary, so to speak?
So I hear you, and I think it's the question is going to be different depending on who you talk to and who you ask this
Interesting. Well,
question.
no, I'm asking you. Yeah, I want to hear. Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that
I
the
dig. Yeah.
response of who enjoys it versus who doesn't enjoy it comes according to what their lineage is, what their philosophy is. My philosophy is I love it. Okay, so and if I have I have been playing my fusion music since, you might say, back in the 80s and stuff, 84, when I released it.
Yeah. Well,
And
when did Masters put you on the stage with Escovedo? What year was that?
so that was pre-80s.
Oh,
So,
but this see, I need audio of this stuff, man. This is what I want to hear, man.
right. So
Right,
what I'm
right.
saying is that my being a classical musician actually threw some people off, like my students particularly, right? When I started to do some raga jazz kind of stuff, some of my best students would come up and say, this is interesting that you're able to enter into this field. I said, "Oh, what's the issue?" I mean, I would question them, like, why
Yeah,
do
what
you
are you
find
talking about? Yeah.
so, but the good news was that many of the musicians I was teaching at that time were guitar players. They were saxophone players. They were doing all these Western instruments, and they were learning sitar from me. So now I gave them an out and said, okay, listen, I've been teaching you sitar, or I've been teaching you this. You bring your guitar over here now and try to play the same thing I taught you. And if you have a saxophone, try to play what I taught you on your saxophone instead of your sitar. And they were like, really? And it was almost like I gave them permission to do that, and otherwise they would feel embarrassed. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
So
You
I
gave them
wasn't,
permission to do what? To come in and enter your world, or explain that more?
like how you're saying that. Did you get some?
Grief.
Yeah. So these people who were learning from me actually felt that they couldn't learn an Indian musical system without by applying it on their instruments. They had to learn a traditional instruments to be able to play the music, right?
Yes.
So they were actually by me saying that, why don't you try it on your saxophone? They actually gave them permission to actually feel okay about doing it. You see what I mean?
I dig. Now I dig. Yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah,
do
so
you?
I
Yeah.
and I told them, look, bring your saxophone. Now, here's the big problem with all this, which a lot of people don't understand. Indian music at its heart is a very the intonations that I use are not the same as the Western intonations. We're dealing with a concept of equal temperament and a concept of just intonation, which is purely harmonically correct music. Okay, so when you try to fuse the two elements together, there is a major clash. So when you bring a saxophone in here, or even a piano or something that is tuned into equal temperament, and you try to play music, if I call it a rag, I'll show you something which is so
Please.
cool.
Yeah.
And you're gonna go, yeah. See, that's where the two twains really don't meet. Okay, so see when I do this, see that drone? It's called just intonation. It's perfectly in tune. So when you hear these notes, they're all pure. And so if you were to take the same note, now this third, 1, 2, 3, if you play that on a guitar, it'll be here. I don't know if you can hear the difference. And this is just, equal, just. So the equal temperament is about 12 cents or 14 cents higher. Now, when you say cents, I don't know. I'm sure you are familiar with the equal temperament.
Was it
breakdown
decibels or something? Or I mean, what is cents? Yeah, I don't know.
From an octave, from here to here is an octave, and each octave, if you take all the frequencies, divide them by 1200, divide them into 1200 parts, every 100 is a half step, and that's equal temperament. It's a mathematical figure which happens to be close to the actual notes, but it's not exactly close, you see. There's always differences, and those harmonic differences are what we were talking about called ratios. So those harmonic ratios like the thirds and the fourths and the fifths, they are perfect ratios. And when you do equal temperament, they're not perfect ratios. So I'll send you a video that will show you what happens when you listen to equal temperament and how the vibrations, like we're talking about vibrations, they affect your mind differently. So when you hear a sitar going like this, it's pure. That's why it's so relaxing. It's so meditative, and it takes you into a zone quicker than the other way around. Equal temperament is playing a third back here, and you hear it is just slightly sharp. Now, a lot of jazz musicians who are really familiar with this stuff will play how they're very clever, because the fifth and the fourths that are really in tune, they will play their chords so that they don't clash with the thirds, okay? When they play a third, you will hear them play a chord that is a fifth of the third or a fourth of the third. So when you listen to really good, clever people that are playing keyboards and stuff, they're not going to strike thirds and sixths out really straight ahead at you, because you're going to cringe, okay? So they know how to camouflage it. And I've seen piano players that are mind-blowing, the way they play their left hand and the right hand and how they marry them together, keeping away from these dissonance even if it's slight, even if it's 14 cents, it's enough to bother you. Now, some people will say, I'm so used to equal temperament, I can't hear the other one. You know, that's fine. I mean, you hang somebody upside down, they're going to walk upside down for the rest of their life, you know. So what I'm saying is I'm a sound yogi. I'm a yoga person who believes in sound. I have taken apart frequencies. I've taken apart ratios. So I'm not going to go and play sa-ga. But if a saxophone comes at me and plays my rag, which I'm going to say sa-ga, I'm not going to give him that, because that's not right. So that's why choir singing, when you hear a 4-part choir harmony,
sure,
like a shop, they don't have barbershop is sung separately. There's no instrument backing them up, because an instrument comes in, it destroys the barbershop's harmony. It destroys the purity. And a lot of cats out there that know this stuff will totally go like, man, this guy's speaking, the ultimate truth here, because that's the way it is. Now I love equal temperament also. I'm not going to totally nail it to the wall and crucify it over here, because with equal temperament, it gives us the opportunity to play like Schoenberg. You couldn't have Schoenberg if there was no equal temperament. You couldn't have these Bach's crazy key changes and stuff like that if we didn't have equal temperament. Even Bach, if you go back to his music, his preferred instrument was called well-tempered, like the well-tempered clavier. He called it well-tempered because they always corrected for some of these anomalies, you see. And if you play Bach right now on a piano and you have Bach sitting in front of that, he's going, man, stop doing that, because the piano is not doing justice to what he was writing. He just wrote those things as exercises to teach his children, right?
Can you? You say you are a sound yogi. A lot of people in this, yoga is so misunderstood in the West, and a lot of people just believe that it's supposed to be done in some sort of sedentary way, stillness, which is one way to do it. But as a sound yogi, how did you develop your meditative practices?
So the sound yoga is actually a yoga practice. It's called Nad Yoga.
Nad Yoga.
Nad Yoga. And Nad is vibration. Vibration is really what is all around us. Vibration is the heart of music also. So, when you hear a beat, for instance, like when you hear the thudding like this, tuck, 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 if you look at that, it's just a point in time. You're hearing it pop, pop, pop. But if you speed it up, if you go but you go if you play it fast, then you get a musical note. Okay? So on one side we have rhythm, on the other side we have melody. Now, isn't that interesting? We are living in a world of rhythm, and we are professing to being, musicians. Musicians are just rhythm people, okay? Because at the heart of everything is this vibration, is this pulse. And so pulse is the sign of life. Without movement, there is no life. And so, I really, I give, every day I give prayer to the fact that we are a part of this, what we call Nad Yoga, which starts from Ah, and then when you close your mouth, and that's how we have the beautiful word called Om. Ah, open your mouth, to close your mouth, and This is the first rhythmic value that we give to our the whole musical gamut of who we are, because it's the life breath, you see. And so music is that part of it. And, I remember when you told me 3 o'clock and I told you about these
yes, please,
that use the three as so significantly. You see, one, basically rhythm is in our culture considered, we considered counting it with clapping. Like if you go dinka dinna tikkinna dinna dinka dinna tikkinna dinna, right? We clap. So this clapping is traditionally called tali. And tal, the word tal means the clap, you see. When we hear that Zakir Hussain is playing tin tal, so we go, oh, tal, So all these words are so important to know what the meaning of those words are. And so, anyway, so the jhap tal, for instance, tin tal, rupak tal, jalti tal, deepchandi tal, these are all names of rhythm cycles, because tal means the cycle kept by clapping, you see?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so jhap tal is dhin-na, din-dhin-na, tin-na, din-dhin-na, din-na, din-dhin-na, tin-na. Now, if you would see me, you would notice that I'm going clap, clap, and then no clap, clap, you see? So the no clap is the void. So
absolutely, yeah.
You see, the great philosopher in India called Panini, everybody in the world, I think it was like 12th century or something, everybody in the world was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was the first to say there has to be a void called zero. He added zero and became 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, and now because of having a zero, we are in a digital revolution that uses zeros and ones. Isn't that a profound thing?
Well, considering that we're living through it, it's pretty awe-inspiring. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm curious about your father. What he thought about. There are two guys you mentioned Panini, but the cats that are that came to the West, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and Neem Karli Baba. Did he know them? Did he respect what they did?
Oh, my father was himself a yogi, and I think I would say that he's of course familiar with all the people that are being a part of the spiritual circle, but he was not moving in any of them. He said he always called himself a missionary of music.
This man is a missionary of music. Riff on that. Explain that.
Or actually, he called himself a musical evangelist. I think that's the proper word.
Dude, people need to start calling themselves. That's a musical evangelist. Bless.
He was a musical evangelist, and he always placed greatest value on the yogis that could sing. He says if a person who sings a mantra does not understand the music behind it, the mantra does not come out with the proper value.
That's right.
So If you're singing Om Bhur Bhava Swaha Tat Sat Vitur Varenyam, his mantra is good, meditation is good. But Om Bhur Bhava Swaha Tat Sat Vitur Varenyam. So singing with good intonation to him was equally important, because see, these mantras were written thousands of years ago through a Vedic philosophy to have certain values. Notes held value and they emphasize the value, just like song does. If you're saying, she loves you, yeah, 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 she loves you, yeah, 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 with a love like that, you could. But if you go, she loves you, yeah, 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 you see, you making the
Wow.
note,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
That's
if you say happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, if you do like that, see, it brings emotions into the field, right? And so mantras are just like that. So he always believed that yogis should have good voices. They should get training in singing. They should have knowledge of our musical Vedas before they go and say, I am a Pandit and I can chant these things. He would give value to the ones that had that. So it's not like he didn't recognize all of them out there, but he believed that the singers, people who are musicians, were the most evolved of all the yogis out there. And if one of them manages to practice the spiritual practices of Upanishads or the Puranas, the Vedic Puranas and stuff, he would probably give them a little bit more credit than the other ones. Although they all did a good job eventually to bring our culture from the dark ages into the present mode.
Well, yeah, totally. But I mean, why does he consider the musical evangelical or the musical yogi the highest, most evolved?
Because of their sensitivity level is definitely into the upper regions because of the spiritual nature of being connected to the vibrations.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think
exactly. You nailed it. I want to ask you, Ashwin, Batish, such an honor to talk to you again. There's a lot of cats. I mean, you talked about spoons falling on the floor of the Krishna Cafe, and so people weren't really digging what you were playing, but then over time you got better. Even when cats reach a certain level of aptitude and ability, a lot of times I see cats. I see a lot of cats just playing amazing music, but I also see cats, and we talk about that they can't get out of their own way. They can't get out of their own ego, and as a result, it's inhibiting to them on the stage. And I kind of wanted you to talk to people in your mind as a teacher, as a musical evangelist, and how should cats go about finding their own individual voice? And did you ever have a hard time? How have you dealt with your ego?
Well, so the first part of the question, I will say that you need always to have a good teacher at hand. I mean, this to me, life of musicianship began with my teaching that I learned from my father and from my mother. Then you need to have humanity at the core of it all, because you can't become conceited. You can't be egotistic about everything. You can't become like like a lot of musicians think that they know they're like gods or something like that. You have to have humility. You have to have humbleness. So those are the practices that I follow. I really don't think I am anywhere in this world. And I think any musician, I'm not just putting words into their mouth, but I think, to be thinking that you are it and you have made it to the thing is really doing injustice to the fact that this whole world, there are millions of musicians that can, bring it on. I mean, and
Sure.
You can't be them. They can't be you, but you can't be them either. So you have to respect the fact that they are enlightened. You have to respect the fact that you don't know everything. You have to, you have to also be accepting of the fact that you have to let go of this knowledge and bring in newer people into the fold. You can't be the one that and disappears from this earth. If you have learned something, for God's sake, pass it on. I,
But I mean, that is why the musical evangelist is the highest evolved yogi, because it's about knowing nothing, or knowing, being in awe of not knowing, and still being that connected to the highest level of vibration. If you're walking around, I don't know, man. I just feel like in that way, like, why would you even want to pretend to know that you knew everything? Because that would take all the curiosity out of life anyway. And that's why you see a lot of cats that are pretty miserable like that. But I mean, in terms of, there's an issue now about growing up. Like, your ears were huge because you were listening. You were an auditory learner first before you learned to read music. Most cats that I've interviewed are like that. They were maybe not autodidacts. Some of them were, but they learned to hear music and listen to music before they learned to read it. And so now you have this issue in schools where kids are coming into an academy where you were literally learning on the bandstand. They're coming into the academy, and oftentimes they come out sounding like their professors. There's a homogenization of sound today, and I'm talking about Western jazz sort of. I can't tell who anybody is anymore. It's hard to. As opposed to individual sound, you have your own individual sound. Everybody, if cats came up to people and said, "Hey, you sounded great. You sounded just like that," to your generation, they want to slit their wrists. They want it to be individualistic. And I wonder about the way you try to help cats find their own voice. Or is there, do you think that there are, and again, it's an issue because it's a livelihood for a lot of people. What is the academy? How is the academy beneficial? What are the benefits of the academy to growing the vocabulary of all musics?
So at the heart of it, I think there's so many different beautiful forms of music out there. As there are teachers that would be happy to share that. Getting individual voices going, though, I think that's utterly important.
That's so huge.
You can't let somebody out there and make them into a clone of somebody else. You have to teach them everything that they can learn, but then tell them, please don't play that now.
No, but do you think that, you had a unique situation, but because your dad basically said, okay, let's get you right on the stage, is it about letting your kids get used to sort of sucking for a while and then ultimately trying to, it's about, it's okay to be unique. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to sound like yourself.
I think I'm sure every parent is concerned, or every teacher is concerned about throwing somebody into the fire and saying, or into the
failure. But it's not failure.
But yeah,
it's a swaha, right? It's like a burn.
I would say throw them out there, but don't forget the
light wrap. Yeah, don't forget throwing them the life raft before they go. Yeah, I dig.
So they're like, I'm not going to drown, man. Somebody's going to save me. But can you believe it, though? If you can provide the environment, and the West is so beautiful that they can actually provide spaces where people can go in and get. Okay, so they might make $50 an hour or something, or $25 an hour. This is not about the money that you make. I think we have to teach people to be okay about going in front of, sharing. You see, the sharing side of it, I think, is the key. And with sharing comes a realization, like I learned that by sharing and feeling substandard, I had to up my game. And I think I learned it earlier on in my life, thank God, rather than, when I'm 70, 80 years old. I don't want to learn it at that time because it doesn't make sense. But I think that's the thing. When you are proud, when you have an ego, when you're feeling like you can do something in this world, to feel a little bit of a jolt, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And that tells you, like, oh man, I need to get my act better. If I want that, the carrot is dangling up there. You want a carrot? Come for it. And so, but suddenly, after you do this thing, my realization of, thankfully, was when I started to play my fusion music, and I did and this is just a more of a fun and joke kind of thing. I released the Bombay Boogie, and
please send me that. Can you send me that track?
Yeah, I did.
You sent me the Bombay Boogie.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I sent you like a couple of albums, 3 albums worth of stuff. You know?
Wow. Okay.
So, but the Bombay Boogie was my first song, and it was all just basically me just sitting there with my sitar, and it's a rag called Kirwani, and I'm just playing that. And then I made copies of it on old Apple tapes, like Apple computer was going
Sure.
out of
Oh,
business.
yeah, the discs. Yeah.
Yeah, so they had all these software cassettes that they were dumping. I picked up 60,000 of them from the warehouse, and I literally drove it up Highway 17, and that incline was, the car was so heavy, not just almost up, the engine went to the hot side, we had to stop. My dad was with me going like, oh man, we should just keep going. The summit is coming. I'm like, Dad, we need to stop this truck right now,
Wow. Wow.
60,000 cassettes, and guess what I did with them? I put my Bombay Boogie on most of them, and I just gave it away.
Yeah.
Literally. I just said, hey, try this out. And
It was that was you were sharing, because when you put it out there and you're vulnerable, you have no idea what will come back.
Yeah, I gave it to kids, and the kids were my biggest fans. Like parents would come to me and says, "Can I have another one of them?" Because my and he eat his food unless he listens to your music.
Wow. Wow. That is so inspiring, man. I mean, Ashwin Batish, I hope to God, man, I hope I can get back to Santa Cruz soon, man. I'd love to do another interview in person with you, man. I really feel like you've already done so much in this life, but I just feel like you're immensely important bridge for especially younger cats who are just, there's just so many people. There's so many cats that are out there sort of making a living as a musician and playing it safe. And the problem is they don't go out there and see what the carrot is because they're too insecure to fail or fall or feel stupid. And, I can just tell you, man, I mean, if you want to find your voice, you just got to get out there and woodshed for a long time and make a fool. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but you know what? Stop feeling. It's also the three things that are, huge in Judeo-Christian, dogmas is shame, guilt, and judgment. And people need to somehow just melt that away. It's got to be like a burn of some sort because you riff on that.
My life goal, if you don't mind, Jeff, my life
Please.
goal is to create places where people can come and play music. And, I know this pandemic hit us hard, and I know that, it should not be, I love places that have a good musical stage and stuff where people can come and try things.
Sure.
And we have several places in Santa Cruz that were very successful. But I'd like these places to have availability, almost like, how people go to a karaoke bar, right? When they go there and they sing some, that makes them happy. They have a few drinks. That's a different story. But a serious place where people could sit down, play music, and people would come and be audiences. I think there's nothing more beautiful than that. And it's a two-way street. The people enjoy it, and the people who are playing enjoy it also. More so just than the fact the enjoyment, it's the interactiveness that both of them get out of it. This presentation and this recipient and the person who's divulging the information, they both have a symbiotic relationship in this, and they both take away life with each other when they have that kind of thing. You on their energy, they on your energy.
Absolutely. No, it's a healing. Music is a healing force, and those jam rooms or playrooms, like those are things that existed when you first came to the United States, and there was a lot of different places to play and opportunities and open-mindedness, and it's just there's a real bent toward. We are so. The bean counters have taken over everything, so that unless you can, sort of, I am totally with you in this idea of just creating spaces for. And opportunities for cats to be able to become comfortable playing with other people. That's the point too. Like there's a lot of teachers, like the pandemic has not really altered their teaching existence because they can teach on Zoom and reach so many more people and all that. And I think that's great. But music is not meant to be performed in a Zoom or a video or live stream. It's cool, but it has to be person to person. It has to be.
With with the Zoom things, what gets me is the delay.
I have, I've done zeros. I mean, I'm so I'm so off the grid that to me, one of the magical parts of my show is just like your father. It's about the voice. There's nothing visual about it. It is merely the voice. And, over time, we'll see. But I look forward to continuing our collaboration, man. You bring a lot of joy and a lot of enlightenment to the world, man. So just keep it happening.
I'm very thankful that I have this ability to share and have this ability and the wherewithal to be available to people. My teaching at the university over here has been tremendous. So many students that I have turned on to this whole concept of what we're talking about. And I think the one thing, the takeaway for me from the people that come, they are just normal students. They're doing physics, maths, and, technologies of different kinds. They're not musicians, but they come to my class, and then they take away this whole sense of this Nad Yoga, this vibrations, because they take with them a future of, understanding of how to coexist, which is my goal. Is music is really like how we breathe. It breathes air and you exhale and everything. Music empowers you with soulfulness. And I think once they understand that, they can be an engineer, they can be a mechanic, but music is what is at the heart of who they are, And that's the sustenance is through all these other technological things that they have to do. But music is always going to be their friend.
Well, man, much love to you. We'll talk soon, man.
Same to you also, Jeff. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed these talks.
You're welcome, my brother. Take care.
All right, cheers.
Bye. Well, that's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. Thank you to Ashwin Batish for just continuing to spread a lot of positivity and enlightenment all around. And we will see you later. Thank you.